Hey there, Seattle Sports Nation. I'm Jackson. We got Marshall here too for the Seattle Sports Soup. This is our 4th episode of the Monthly Brew. It is March 13th, 2013. A lot of big news on today's show. We'll talk about Percy Harvin, the Hawks in free agency, the Mariners, and the Sounders' big win last night. We're going to start off, though, with obviously the big transaction of the week. The Seahawks trading their first-round pick this year, 7th-round pick this year, and a 3rd-round pick next year for the Vikings' all-purpose receiver and playmaker Percy Harvin. Marshall, what do you think of the deal?
I personally think this is an exceptional deal, and I think most of you guys would agree with me. Percy Harvin can be an all-pro at his best. People might say he has his injury issues and all that, but hasn't had a migraine in 2 years. He said that yesterday in his press conference, and I think that even with the ankle injury last year, he should be all ready to go at the start of this year and should have a huge impact on this team. Just imagine him and Russell Wilson running that offense together.
And as I wrote in my my big article that I posted the other day, I think the injury issues are really overstated. As Marshall said, he had had a migraine in 2 years, and before his ankle was broken last year by the Seahawks, he'd only missed 3 games in his first 3 seasons. So really, there's been a lot of people saying that he misses practices and stuff, but he's really proven to be one of the toughest players in the NFL and hasn't really missed much game time until his big injury last year.
He just seems happy to be here.
Yeah, he seems super excited at his press conference. I really liked when he came in and talked about the first time he met Russell Wilson. He was the first guy he met, and Wilson was actually in the film room, which just adds to the dedication that Wilson has. I just love that quote.
And he also has a great relationship with Darrell Bevell, offensive coordinator, and Sidney Rice. So he's coming into a familiar situation.
Yeah, for those of you who don't know, obviously Harvin and Sidney Rice were teammates back on the Vikings a few years ago before Sidney Rice came over. And Darrell Bevell was the offensive coordinator for the Vikings, Harvin's first 2 seasons there. So that continuity is not just really stressed by Pete Carroll as well, that it's going to be important in integrating Harvin into the offense because Bevell already knows Harvin's strengths and his style of play.
And it's not only going to be the offensive side of the ball, it's special teams. I mean, he's an all-purpose kind of guy. Run the ball, catch the ball, and return kicks. And I think he's averaged like 27-point-something yards per kickoff return in his career so far.
Yeah, and last year when he was returning kicks in the 9 games he played, he only had 1 kickoff return that was less than 20 yards, which shows you that not only is he explosive, but he's consistently at that high level.
Just fired up about this guy.
Yeah, it's going to be fantastic. And so we have a new poll on Seattle Sports Soup. It is how many all-purpose yards do you think Percy Harvin will have this year? We have a few different options you can choose from. So make sure you go on the blog and vote.
We got under 1,000 yards, between 1,000 and 1,500, between 1,500 and 2,000, 2,000 and 2,500, and then more than 2,500. So
we've already had some people vote. Get on there and vote. We'll be talking about it next show.
Got some big expectations.
Definitely. And so one impact beyond the draft picks we're losing of the Percy Harvin trade is that the Seahawks chose to release Leon Washington, which I'd say is sort of an expected move because he was just a specialist who played on special teams, and now Percy Harvin will be taking that role.
I don't see why people are getting so mad over
this. It saves $2.8 million against the cap, and also he's really just unnecessary. But
he's a great guy and all that, but it's not necessary, of course.
And definitely, it was also released this morning that the Buccaneers said they would have traded a draft pick for Leon Washington, but the Seahawks management, John Schneider and the gang, did the classy move and chose to release Leon Washington so he could pick his own team because they obviously had sentimental value for Washington. He was one of the first guys the Schneider team got in their first year as the front office people of the Seahawks. So clearly they had a lot of great respect for the guy. And it's going to be sad to see him leave. He single-handedly won us a few games. But
yeah, so, I mean, with all this movement, you have a new outlook on free agency and the draft now. And I think Pro Football Focus reported that the Seahawks were pretty close with John Abraham, signing him to a deal I think that would be a pretty solid move. I mean, good veteran presence on a young team. Of course, the pass rushing, he might have a few sacks in him still. What do you think about the free agent outlook now?
Well, the free agent, the pool for defensive tackles is definitely diminishing with Henry Melton obviously getting the franchise tag a little while ago. And the Oakland defensive lineman, Bryant, he's the mugshot guy, for those of you who know across the internet. He was just signed by the Browns. So the defensive tackle market's getting a little diminished, but there are still some veteran and some younger guys on the defensive line we will touch on a little later in the toss-up segment. But obviously, not only does it change the outlook on free agency, it changes the way the Hawks look at the draft, because not only do they don't have a first-round pick now, but also they're not going to be really looking on the offensive side of the ball for weapons. They're going to be looking for guys in the defensive line and the linebacking crew.
Yeah, so some names that have been mentioned over on ScoutTheSeahawks.com, which Derek Stevens does a great job with, is Kasim Green, who's an outside linebacker from Rutgers. Had 126 tackles last year and 5.5 sacks with to go along with 2 interceptions. He could be the second outside linebacker taken off the board after Alec Ogletree is expected in the top 15. But another outside linebacker, Arthur Brown from Kansas State. Some of you might remember him from the Fiesta Bowl. A great presence on the team. We also got Kawan Short, defensive tackle.
He's a monster.
Yeah.
You got his measurements are Marshall. He man's huge. He's like 6'3", 300 pounds. He is not only a run stopper, but he can get some sacks as well. He's a big man on the inside, and he can really be a dominant force that could fall in the second round. The Seahawks have the 56th pick, for all you math whizzes, it's the 24th pick in the second round. And so we'll see what they look to do with that pick. Expect a defensive lineman, though, or possibly a linebacker, because those are obviously our 2 biggest needs in the draft.
All right, so I think that's it for the Seahawks, and we're going to move on to the Huskies. Obviously, some big news this week with Austin Seferian-Jenkins and his whole incident, and Steve Sarkisian commenting on that, as well as the Pac-12 tournament this week in Vegas.
Yeah, so obviously, for those of you who don't know, Austin Seferian-Jenkins was arrested for DUI this weekend, and it is team policy that he gets suspended indefinitely pending an investigation. So as of right now, the way I understand it, Austin Seferian-Jenkins cannot practice with the team until the investigation is finished. And Coach Sark and him both commented. They're basically just saying that it's not up to standards, and Austin was very apologetic, but it's still it's very disappointing. Yeah, it's really disappointing. I didn't expect it from a guy like him.
Yeah, for sure. I thought it'd be from if it was to happen, I would expect it to be from somebody else and not ASJ, All-American tight end. Part of the suspension is that he can't interact with the team at all, which is kind of crazy. So he can't even talk to any other players or all that stuff. So I think in the end it'll turn out to be fine, and he'll go back to playing great football. But right now it kind of has a negative impact on the team in spring football.
Yeah, hopefully he'll be able to come back and not miss any games, and hopefully it won't hurt his status in the eyes of the NFL scouts too much. It's really been his only blemish on his record so far, but it's still a big one. Obviously, being arrested for DUI is.
I think he has to be suspended for a game.
Does he have to be suspended for a game? I think it's at least one. I think it's one game. I don't think it's much more than that.
Yeah, just like one.
So missing that first game, missing that one game is obviously going to be a big deal.
I mean, if it's Boise State, that's huge because new stadium, team that beat you to end last season. We'll just see how it ends up.
Yeah, so hopefully he gets all resolved and ASJ can come back bigger and better than ever when it's time. So now I think we'll do a quick talk about the Pac-12 tournament coming up. It starts today. As we speak, the games have already started. Washington plays Washington State tonight, 8:30 tip. And if they win, they play Oregon. I think that Washington has a pretty good chance of beating Wazoo. And if they do, they'll play Oregon. They've lost both times they've played Oregon in the regular season. But I still think that with Scott Suggs shooting the way he is recently, and if CJ Wilcox can just pick it up a tick, they'll have a chance to give Oregon a run for their money.
Yeah, I think though Wazoo will be a tough challenge for them at first because they've really picked it up as of late, and I think Brock Modem said they've implemented some new kinds of plays and offense to get him the ball more because Simmons is so good at defending him and denying him the ball.
The two times Wazoo and UW played each other in the regular season, UW won both meetings, but one was by 4 points, one was by 5 points. So obviously, that's going to be a tough matchup. But I do think the Huskies can pull out the win.
Yeah, hopefully, and I think Oregon will be a super tough challenge if they move on. But I mean, the neutral court should, I don't know, it should kind of even it out a little like it's supposed to. But
yeah, and with the star point guard for Oregon, Dominique Artis, just coming back for a few games, showed a little bit of rust recently. Yeah. So I think that I honestly think that if the shooters
the Ducks beat him without Artis. So.
Yeah, but I stand by my point that if Suggs and Wilcox can both be shooting well at the same time, then the Huskies, they have a chance to beat anyone in the Pac-12.
And even more than the Pac-12.
Yeah, so I really think that Suggs has been shooting fantastic recently, and Wilcox has shown signs of picking it up again. So if he can hopefully he can just turn it on and get it right for the tournament, and we can be good to go, get a couple wins hopefully.
And of course you need a solid play from Abdul Gadi.
Yeah, he's kind of a key. He's been a real big key this season, all on both ends of the court.
All right, so I think that about wraps it up for the Huskies. Just keep updated on the Pac-12 tournament and all that stuff, and I think we're going to move on to the toss-up section.
As Marshall said, we're going to be moving on to our favorite part of the show, toss-up. And our first question of the day is, who got the better deal? The Seahawks trading the first-round pick, seventh-round pick, and the third round next year for Percy Harvin, or the 49ers trading a sixth-round pick for Anquan Bolden?
Hawks, by far. You know, you're not going to get a Percy Harvin value at 25 or the 7th round or the 3rd round combined. All of those guys drafted in those positions will not equal the production that Percy Harvin will give the Seahawks. And Percy Harvin is basically like a draft pick. He's 24, super young, has a lot of production left in him, of course. I mean, as long as he doesn't get injured, and I don't see... I mean, I guess the Vikings kind of had to do it since
they had to do it.
He was demanding his trade. So,
yeah, you know, I don't get me wrong. I am quite possibly the biggest Percy Harvin fan alive. I have a massive man crush on Percy Harvin, and I think he would have won MVP last year if he didn't get hurt. But if you're talking about pure value, the Bolden for the 49ers deal was better. Percy Harvin is clearly the better player, and I'm not knocking the deal at all. But the Ravens got fleeced. They got absolutely taken. A sixth-round pick for Anquan Bolden, he could have won the Super Bowl MVP last year. He led the Ravens receivers in all statistical categories in the postseason.
He's 32.
He's still one of the top blocking receivers in the NFL, which goes along great with the 49ers run scheme. He's a tough matchup. If you line him and Vernon Davis up next to each other, no one in the NFL can cover those guys side by side. You know
32 years old. He's nothing left.
He's getting a little old. But Percy Harvin is absolutely phenomenal. He is one of the best receivers, one of the best players in the NFL. But pure value, I go with Bolden for the 49ers.
All right,
Next up, we are going to talk free agents now for the Seahawks. First, we'll start with a pair of veterans. Do you prefer John Abraham formerly of the Atlanta Falcons, or not Dwight Freeney, Richard Seymour of the Raiders now? Dwight Freeney's old.
I got John Abraham on this one. You know, I really liked him when the Seahawks played the Falcons.
I did. He was hurt and gimpy.
Well, even though he was gimpy, I think he still showed that he's got something left. And even though he had some of those injuries, I feel like he's got something left in that tank here and could be revitalized of sorts with a young team.
There you go.
And I think he could go back to his old ways. I mean, all I've heard about Richard Seymour is a huge fat guy. I mean, he's
no. Let me tell you about Richard Seymour. The man was the best pass rusher in the league when he was on the Patriots, and he just took a minor step down when he went to the Ravens. He's lost a step, obviously. He's not what he used to be. But I still think he can be a huge presence. Also, he's more versatile. He can play defensive tackle or defensive end. And I just think, obviously, Abraham has already met with the Seahawks. He's probably closer to a deal with the Seahawks. But if you're talking just guys you want, Richard Seymour is the man. He's a true professional. He's a beast.
6'6".
That's what I'm talking about.
317.
Yeah, he's huge. He can play defensive tackle, but he also can set the edge on the outside.
Abraham had 10 sacks last season and 6 forced fumbles.
He's a sack master. That's the only thing he can do, though. I don't know.
Seymour last season, 15 tackles, 3 sacks.
He was hurt for part of the year.
So what? That means he's not durable at all. He's
all right. Abraham. Okay, Abraham.
30.
John Abraham. He's a fantastic player. He'd be a great addition to the Seahawks. And I think the Seahawks seems like they're getting close to a deal. Abraham with the Hawks.
Seymour is almost 34 years old.
Yeah, he's old. He's an old man. But he's good. I'm telling you. All right. Next up.
Abraham's 35 almost.
Next up, for a younger pair of defensive ends, Michael Bennett or Cliff Averill. Michael Bennett was of the Tampa Bay Buccaneers last year. He had his best season so far. He had around 8 or 9 sacks. He actually made his NFL debut with the Seahawks in 2009 and never really did much, but he had his best season last year. Cliff Averill was of the Lions last year. In a down year, he had 9 sacks. But I think part of the reason Cliff Averill has had so much success is because he's been on the same defensive line as Ndamukong Suh, who's drawn a lot of double teams. But I think both guys would be good additions to the team. So who do you think is a better fit, and who would you prefer, Marshall?
In this situation, I have to go with Michael Bennett. He had a great year last year, 9 sacks, 3 forced fumbles. He only has five years in the league. He's still young, of course. And I think he said he was going to be loyal to the Buccaneers, and the only team, if he's being loyal to the Buccaneers, the only team I could see him going to besides him is the Seahawks, because they signed him after he was undrafted, and he might feel a sense of loyalty or feel like he owes something to the Seahawks for that draft pick. I'm not saying Averill's bad. I just don't think Averill's going to end up with the Seahawks.
Yeah, I think Averill's a little on the overrated side because he was on the same line as Ndamukong Suh. I do think Averill's a good player, but Averill's also going to be a lot more expensive because he's had better years in the past, so he's going to be asking for a lot more money. I think Michael Bennett, he's also been said by the Buccaneers that he's not really their top priority. They've been focusing more on the secondary, trying to get Revis and Deshaun Goldson. So I think Michael Bennett could leave the Buccaneers, and I think the Seahawks would be a great destination for him. For our fourth piece of toss-up today, we're going to talk about the Mariners. They started off with 10 wins in a row, I believe, and now they have lost 5 of 6. So, Marshall, which streak do you think is more going to be indicative of the team this year? And also, do you think anything in the preseason really matters for what's going to happen in the regular season?
I don't think much of the preseason matters. I think this is a hard one. Either 10 wins in a row or 5 of 6 losing. I gotta say it's probably gonna be the 10 wins in a row. I'm gonna be optimistic. Like we've talked about previously on the show. Improved power, everything. About the Seahawks, improved hitting, all that. You just gotta love that.
Yeah, I think that definitely the offense will be better this year. But in this period where they've lost 5 of 6, the power has sort of decreased, and it's resulted in them losing, which begs some questions about the pitching staff. It really remains to be seen. Obviously, the preseason doesn't hold that much stock with me, but we'll just have to wait and see, I guess. For our final piece of toss-up today, it's a little bit off the Seattle area deal, but I think it's a fantastic debate. A couple guys have sort of self-given, but not self-given themselves some great new nicknames this year. Kobe Bryant said his buddy gave him the nickname Vino, which obviously means wine, and wine gets better with age, so Kobe gets better with age. I think it's fantastic. But David Wright, with his monster performances so far on the World Baseball Classic, he's been given the nickname Captain America. I think those are both absolutely fantastic nicknames that I wish I could have either. So Marshall, which do you think is the better nickname?
I gotta go with Vino because I took Latin for 4 years. That's a Latin word.
Oh,
I love the Latin.
Bringing in the intellect there with Marshall. It's a good one. Oh, I'm a big fan of Vino. I've never been a fan of Kobe.
Kobe's a beast.
Being a Celtics fan, but I still think that's a fantastic nickname. Earned some respect from there. But come on, Captain America? It's like the best nickname of all time. He's like the ultimate superhero. He is leading too original. I don't think that's possible. He's leading the Team USA to some wins in the World Baseball Classic. They're still in it. You can follow that on ESPN. It'll be
5 p.m. tomorrow,
there you
Dominican Republic.
It'll be a great matchup.
That's going to be awesome.
So that sort of ends our toss-up segment for today's show, and we will next move into a short Mariners update. So obviously, as we said already, they've lost 5 of 6. Generally, the power has decreased, but Jason Bay did hit another home run, which is an encouraging sign. I just think the pitching...
I mean, Felix came in, made his first couple of starts this past week. He did all right. I mean, you're not going to see a full 100% effort from Felix until the regular season, but I mean, he's doing fine, just cruising through the innings, getting through spring training, which is much expected. I think, like Jackson said, Jason May's showing his worth. Casper Wells did early. That's going to be a battle to watch for sure.
Definitely.
The young guys are playing well. Taiwan Walker kind of had a rough outing last time, I think.
Yeah, he's been a little up and down.
But, they're still super young, only 19 or however old those guys are. But, I think the Mariners are just... You don't really know what you're going to get this year. I mean, They could have a super good year and surprise people, or they could just go back into their old ways and just totally get tanked.
Yeah, they're also in one of the tougher divisions in baseball with the Rangers, Angels, and the A's are up and coming as well. So I think that it's going to be tough to see from the preseason because we're expecting the team to be so different than last year, so it's really hard to predict because of that what the regular season success is going to be. I think only time will tell, and with about 3 weeks left before.
That's like our key phrase, only time will tell.
Yeah,
we always say that.
Because really it's hard to predict because the Mariners team is going to be so different offensively and in the pitching staff than last year. It's hard to predict because they're in new situations, new team, all that. So we'll just have to wait and see when the season starts. So stay tuned.
So the Seattle Sounders got that huge win last night, and I know we haven't talked about them before in the podcast, but their win was just too good to ignore. I mean, won 3-1, 3-2 on aggregate against. I always forget the name.
It's the first time an MLS team has defeated a Mexican opponent in the current format of the very long name here, CONCACAF Champions League. CONCACAF Champions League. That's right. They were the Tigres of the UANL. No MLS team can say they've done what the Sounders did, which is always great. And Sounders coach Sigi Schmid said, quote, "We wanted the win. We felt we could win. We felt we could step up the pressure and do much better than we did down there. We're very proud of what the guys accomplished, and to be the first is a very good thing." So obviously it's exciting getting the big win and the first MLS team to do that.
It was huge, and I mean, Jimmy Traore... Well, one of the best.
That was one of the best goals I've ever seen. I mean, it was number. I don't know how it was
number 2 on Sports.
Should have been number 1.
Plays.
I mean, that was one of the best goals I've ever seen.
It was so dirty.
Which one was the number 1?
Hockey guy just weaves through everyone.
Oh no, that was sweet. Topic, but no. I mean, Jimmy Traore, it was ridiculous.
And then DeAndre Yedlin, homegrown player, 19 years old. The guy, another great. Another great goal. Except it was deflected off somebody, but. If you don't shoot, you're not gonna score. That's how the saying goes.
That's right.
The master, the best player on the team, Eddie Johnson, comes through in the end and gets the goal to put the Sounders ahead 3-2 on the aggregate and to advance to the semifinals of the CONCACAF tournament. And also on some Sounders news, Obafemi Martins has come over from Europe. He's a high-powered scoring forward. I know a ton of fans have been following his transaction process throughout the last couple of weeks or so. He's finally relieved to get to the Sounders, and I think he's pretty excited.
Yeah, so he's a good veteran. He is Nigerian actually, but he played for a Spanish club previously. He had to pay the buyout clause of almost $4 million in his contract, so that way he could leave the Spanish club and come to the Sounders. But all he's been saying is how it's finally great to get everything going, and he's excited to come to the new team.
He's played for Newcastle United, which is UEFA Champions, English Premier League. That's what I was looking for.
Yeah, so obviously he'll be a good veteran presence and hopefully another goal scorer for the team. So I believe that wraps it up for our Sounders news and wraps up for our show. Actually, we're going to finish the show with our thing we do every show now, our daily shout-outs. Marshall, you want to start off?
I got John Schneider. This guy's just, I don't think there's a better general manager in the league. He is a class act. Who gives a guy away for free when you could get a draft pick just because you like the guy? I mean, that's just one of the nicest things I've heard that's happened.
It's also one of the stupider things that's happened. But
it's one of the nicer things that's happened in the NFL when players and people always say it's a business right now. It's about it's life, and it's about pleasing your players who have put in the effort for you day in and day out, and I think it was just a class act. And he's got Percy Harvin, best player on the league.
Absolutely, that's a great one. Some of you might mock me for this one, but I'm going to go with my shout-out is Skylar Diggins of Notre Dame.
She's a babe.
She is one of the best players in women's college basketball this year. She's a senior in the Big East Conference Championship. She had a monster night, a steal, and an assist on the game-winning basket with 0.5 seconds left to beat UConn. I'm going to say Skylar Diggins. She might lead their team past Baylor and win the national championship. Yeah, that's my shout-out for the day, and that is our show for the day. Thanks for listening. Go like us on Facebook, follow us on Twitter, and
also shout out to the new part of the Sports Soup Network.
There you go.
RHS Sports Soup. Check it out on Twitter. You know what to do.
Go follow, like us on Facebook, follow us on Twitter. Thanks for listening, guys.
Nigga with the game type fifth, that flame right. Spell my name right. B-I-double-G-I-E. Iced out, lights out. Me and Caesar Leo. Getting head for some chick he know. See, it's all about the cheddar.